Hi, everyone. It's Tessa.
And Joe.
From the Unveiling Paradise podcast.
Tessa, summer is almost here, and so many of our listeners are about to have their epic destination wedding.
And we are so excited for you guys.
Before the big day, guys, we want you to make sure you listen to these 3 episodes.
Episode 62, Deep Diving Your Wedding Ceremony.
Episode 53, Questions Your Wedding Guests Will Ask.
And episode 31, the final countdown to your wedding day.
And if you're planning your wedding here in Hawaii, hit us up and ask us about our Unveiling Paradise podcast promo.
Happy planning. Hey, Jet Setters. Hey, Joe. How's it going?
Hey, Tessa. Super excited for today's show.
I'm super stoked. This week, we're talking about wedding planning.
Okay, so wedding planning is this big thing where it's like, what does a wedding planner do? Do we need a wedding planner?
What is a wedding planner?
Yeah, what is a wedding planner? What is a wedding coordinator? Is there any differences?
Right.
You know, it's funny because, I'm addicted to these court TV, like Judge Judy, and I guess Jerry Springer now is what? Judge Jerry.
Stop.
I mean, it's always this crazy. But I swear to God, there's always some wedding vendor who's getting sued.
What?
I was just watching one. This couple had hired their photographer and they spent however much money on this photographer and the photos sucked. And they were like, well, you weren't even taking pictures. You were trying to mac on the girls on the dance floor and you were drinking at the wedding. And of course, this is something that's a horror story for,
right.
Someone to have that actually happen. And maybe they found their photographer on Craigslist or wherever they found them.
Right.
But they were super pissed about everything. And the worst part of the story is, guests were taking pictures of the photographer dancing and drinking. And it's of course, you want to avoid that when you're planning your wedding. So obviously, wedding planners and wedding coordinators are that first line of defense against having horrible vendors at your wedding.
Right.
But that's not all that wedding planners do. They do so much more, And so I guess that's what we're talking about today. What is a wedding planner? What does a wedding coordinator do? And what are some of the things that you actually want to share with anybody who's planning a wedding, what they need to know about wedding planning, right? So the top 5 things that we're talking about today about things you would like to share.
Yeah, things that we wish that you knew.
Perfect. Let's get started.
Awesome. Welcome to Unveiling Paradise, your go-to destination wedding podcast. I'm Tessa, wedding planner and owner of Fred & Kate Events.
And I'm Joe, wedding and adventure photographer of Joseph Esser Photography. We are based in Hawaii, one of the biggest, most popular locations for destination weddings.
We want to share our real-life experiences with you, give you insight from a professional's perspective, and still make sure you're having fun in the process.
We're huge believers in the fact that planning a destination wedding can be one of the most amazing experiences, and we want to bring you along.
We're so excited to talk with you about weddings, Hawaii, and everything else under the sun.
So pack your bags and let's get started. Welcome everybody to our show. Today we're talking about the 5 things wedding planners wish you knew, okay? But before we get started, I want to just quickly ask you, Tessa, let's talk about what is a wedding planner? Because this is something that I've learned over the years, what a wedding planner is to one company might be an entirely different set of services to another. So let's talk about that. So Tessa, what are some of the differences you see in wedding planning?
There's so many different types of wedding planning. And I think the interesting thing is you coming as a photographer, I'm sure you've seen a huge range, whereas for me as a wedding planner, I'm definitely kind of in my lane. I have a certain focus and I'll kind of go over what I see, but I feel like your insight is going to be invaluable because you work with so many different types of planners, coordinators, all of the above.
Right. So
yeah.
I guess what I would say is just to start to break down,
yeah.
There's this big difference between having somebody who helps you plan every step along the way.
Right. Versus having someone that's kind of more on site and the day of.
So who's implementing those plans, right?
Yeah. So I think to kind of start, right, you have wedding planners and you have wedding coordinators. And I think the tricky part is, depending who you talk to, it can be kind of interchangeable.
So what is a wedding coordinator versus a planner?
And this is my definition. What I see as a wedding planner versus coordinator is your coordinator would be more someone that is there on your wedding day, and they are the one that's managing the event and the logistics. So they are coordinating all of the plans, all of the vision that kind of came together for your wedding day. So they are there with their notebook, with their checklist, did the caterer arrive on time? Is the venue set up? Are the chairs set the way they? So they're there checking everybody in, making sure that they're doing what they need to do. The florist arrives on time. The photographer has his shot list. The bride is getting her hair and makeup started. So everyone is kind of where they need to be when they need to be.
So the bride or groom could be the actual person that's planning the whole thing. They're vetting out their vendors and they've chosen their makeup artists. And then the coordinator comes in to make sure that their plans kind of run according to what they were planning.
So they are the executor of the plans, right? So it's making sure that all the plans that you've envisioned and you've thought about and you've spent all this time and money on happen the way you want it to be. And that is my personal definition of what a wedding coordinator is.
Right. So and that's a service that some companies specialize in.
Correct.
Right?
And some companies specialize only in wedding coordination. So they do just the coordination. So not the planning beforehand, just the day of or month of, the coordination of tying all the details together at the end.
Right. And then you have on the other side of the spectrum,
you have more the wedding planning. And so again, I think that skill is really large, right? How much planning you do, right? Are you the one that is actually creating the budget and then building the vision and sketching it out and whatnot? And so I think there is a huge range of services, but in my definition, wedding planning is any of the forethoughts. So if you are working on them with your colors or your theme or layout of the room, right? Those all, to me, fall under wedding planning, the scope of wedding planning.
So wedding planner, would they also be helping you find your vendors?
So that's funny. When you are thinking about vendors and you're looking at booking them, I think it could kind of fall under the scope of a wedding planner or wedding coordinator.
Right.
So it could be both, I think.
Right. Okay, cool. So the difference between wedding planning services and wedding coordinator. And this is something that I think it took me a long time to understand.
Did it?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It took me a long time to understand that, some companies they do day of coordination.
Right.
And that's a term we throw around a lot. You probably hear it a lot, right?
Right.
Day of coordinator. That doesn't mean that they're showing up on the day and that's when they're starting.
Right. But some do.
Yeah.
Some are just the day they show up, give me a timeline, and they're just there to run it.
That's not very common. I feel
it's so rare, but I do know that there are a couple companies that do that.
Most day of coordinators, they start working with you months before the wedding.
A month or two is pretty average, I'd say.
Yeah. And then they're there to make sure that everything is being executed correctly.
Correct.
I guess I must be a little bit slow, but that took me a little bit of time to figure out those distinctions. And when we're working with different companies, we're seeing and experiencing things differently, right?
Well, and I think the point
depending on service.
And I think the point to make with that is even if we are 3 companies that you work with all do say wedding coordination, their services might be different. So you still as a photographer might be seeing 3 different experiences.
And so totally. So that's what we have to get into is when you're starting your planning process, right? What help do you need? Do you need help planning or do you need help executing, right?
Right.
And so that's going to kind of determine what type of planner or coordinator that you're actually going to be booking, right? And making sure that that fits, right? You don't need to have a full wedding planner if you're doing a lot of that homework.
Right.
Or do you?
Right. Well, and in addition to that, right? So you definitely want to find the right fit. Do you need just the coordination? Do you need the planning? And within the planning, how much do you need? Are you willing to do some? So a lot of couples will not need full coordination or full planning. They need partial. So they need some help, but not all. So it's finding 2-part, right? It's finding a company that offers the type of services that you need. But with wedding planning also, I think it's really important for you to find the right fit. There are some planners that really focus on design, for example. There are also a lot of planners that focus on logistics. And so it's finding that right fit for you. And in addition, and I think we've talked about this multiple times, it's finding a vendor that fits your personality, especially with wedding planning. I know that I am not everyone's cup of tea, shocking as that may be. It's okay, right? It's finding the right fit for you because you need to be able to work with this person throughout your whole planning process, whether it be a year. Because of the pandemic, I have couples that are together with me for 2 years or plus. And so if we don't get along, it's a really hard process.
Do you think that all couples should have at least a wedding coordinator on their wedding day?
Yeah, I mean, without hesitation,
would you say no?
I would say yeah. And again, I'm not saying it has to be me, but I'm saying that you're spending so much money and so much time. And it's funny because I was just talking to a girlfriend of mine. She's a photographer as well. And she was talking about her wedding, and I think it was 15 years ago or so, but she did a DIY. She did it for $7,000. And she was saying the one regret she has is she's like, we should have had a wedding planner. She's like, I did not want to be the point of contact. She's like, I was called all day. All the vendors were trying to check in with me. And she's like, I don't know why I didn't think to have someone else take this off my plate on the wedding day.
It's pretty funny. Actually, I'm just thinking about this. You've never been to a wedding where there hasn't been a coordinator before, because you're always the coordinator.
No, I have.
I see it all the time.
I mean, I have as a guest.
Yeah. I see it as a photographer where if there's not somebody who's...
You do weddings without coordinators?
I have, for sure. I've done many. And it's what's funny is that responsibility typically falls on the photographer then.
Oh, interesting.
So, like in terms of, because like photographers, right, we need to make sure that the day flows smoothly.
Right.
Makeup has to be done at a certain time or we're running late.
Right.
So we're like, okay, let's get the makeup done so we can get, into like our photos, our first look or the ceremony or whatever. I've seen weddings where there isn't a coordinator and it always is just chaotic. And it does, you're right, like it falls on either other vendors, right, or it falls on the couple themselves to have to like put out burning bridges and things that are happening that are unexpected. And I feel like every wedding that I've been to, there's always unexpected things that happen. Every time. I
think it's the nature of a wedding or any event. I'm not saying just weddings, but things come up, right? And so you don't want these unexpected responsibilities to fall on the couple or their family or friends.
Yeah. The other thing we want to point out too is that a lot of venues actually require having a wedding coordinator.
Right. And I think we were just talking about it, right? I think when you got married, there was no coordinator required, but now there is. And a lot of venues now are doing that just because I think weddings have gotten more elaborate. There's a lot more going on. And again, venues realize that it should not fall to the couple.
Okay. So Tessa, you have 5 things you want to share with everyone who's planning a wedding.
Okay. So I have 5 things that wedding planners would like you to know.
All right, let's start. Okay, so number 1, what do you got here?
Okay, so number 1, and I think we briefly kind of talked about this earlier, but we're not all the same.
Exactly, right? So
done.
There's this huge range of services.
Yeah, and it's also a range of personalities. Mm-hmm. So it's just with wedding planning, I think it's figuring out, right? Number 1, do you need a wedding planner? Do you need a wedding coordinator? Also understanding, right, that an event or catering manager for a hotel is not the same. They're not your wedding planner. They're not your wedding coordinator. So there's so many differences in that, in addition to the fact that within each category, as wedding planners, we're all very different. Our personalities are different. Our styles are different. How we approach wedding planning is different. So for example, with my services, a lot of times, we'll sit down and we kind of talk through, weekly meetings or monthly meetings or however we set it up. And it's unlimited. So I feel like communication is really important for me with my couples.
I get to work with other coordinators, right?
Yeah, you're like the pro here in the room.
But I know that some coordinators tend to be to lean heavier on the design and the planning part.
Right.
And then some they lean really heavily on the implementation and execution. I guess if it's me, how do I find out what your strengths are? Because I actually think you do both, right? You do planning and coordination.
I do. And it's funny because if people were to ask me, what is your style or what do you... And I think that's an important question to ask. 2 things, right? I think it's important as a couple to figure out what is your style. Are you wanting to spend your budget on design? Is that where you want your money to go? Or are you just kind of finding someone to kind of help you with the coordination and the logistics, right? That will guide you to different personalities. So when you talk to them, it's asking them, what is your style? What does the planning process look like throughout the 1 year or the 6 months or however long you're married? What would be the steps? So you can then figure out, is this someone that focuses on design or is this someone that focuses on logistics? And I think there's no right or wrong, but it's helpful to come into a meeting understanding what you want out of a coordinator, or at least a vision of what you want. Is it a planner? Is it a coordinator? What are you looking for? Because a lot of us wedding planners will do both, right? Most planners have to be able to create a timeline, whether it is a 3-page timeline or a 100-page timeline. They'll have some sort of timeline creation, but beyond that, it's what else do they do, right? Do they do some of the design work? Because some coordinators are no, we don't at all, right? Some planners only focus on design and they don't really want to do a timeline. When you're meeting with wedding planners or potential wedding planners, it's asking them what their style is. What is their planning style?
Yeah. And I hope this is super helpful because I know it took me a long time to figure that out.
Right.
It really did, because it's here's our timeline. We show up and we work, but
right.
There's just so much more. And so I guess when you're choosing your venue, next thing is your coordinator.
I think so.
And what kind of help do you need? What can you manage yourself? And there's some venues that, again, require you having a coordinator. Even if you're DIYing everything,
right,
you still need to have a body on the ground helping. And
right,
if that's all you need, there's companies that do that, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay. So Tessa, what is your second nugget of knowledge that you want to share?
Okay, this one is kind of a weird one, but I feel like it just has to be said.
I like weird.
I know.
I hope it's really, truly weird, or if it's...
No, it's not. I guess it's not. I've overhyped it. Okay, so my number 2 point is that we don't know everything. And what I mean by that is, your wedding planner is a professional, or ideally you're hiring someone that is a professional. It's understanding that our job is to kind of troubleshoot and help you, but we don't know everything. So we need you to learn to trust us. This is how we're going to make your wedding succeed, is by earning your trust and you being able to take a step back and know that we have your best interest at heart.
Wait, so when you say you don't know everything, is that like about the couple and their vision, or is that about, like, what do you mean? Like, you don't, or is it about first aid?
It's, I do know first aid, but it's both, right? It's understanding that in the beginning, when we first meet, I'm not going to know everything about you, right? So when I'm giving vendor recommendations, for example, I try to customize to what they want, right? So if they want a photographer that's super chill, very quiet, like, I will probably not recommend you. Right?
Thanks. I take that as a compliment.
Yeah. So I think it's understanding, and I tell people in the beginning, like, we're still in the getting to know you phase. So, like, I may not hit it every time, like, but be honest, let me know what you like, and just trust that I am constantly trying to adjust to make sure that I understand and get your vision. Mm-hmm. On the other side, right, it's also understanding that our job is to troubleshoot throughout the wedding day. So even if things feel like they're a little chaotic, like, just trust your planner or trust your coordinator on the day of that whatever's happening, they're going to take care of it. I have a lot of couples, and it's cute because a lot of times the groom will have, like, the timeline on his phone, and he's like, it's 10:32. Like, where's the photographer? And I'm like, it's fine. Like, I know where he is. He's just checking in at security. We're fine, So they'll get really nervous.
That's horrible. Photographers, be on time, guys.
I know. Right. I used it as an example. All photographers are on time. No big deal. But again, right, it's understanding that our job is to bend and adjust. But I think the day will be so much easier for them if they trust the fact that the coordinator has it under control.
Yeah, because you're texting with the photographer, like, and being like, "Where are you at?
Get your butt here. Where are you?" Right? But we don't need the couple to know that, and I think that's really important. So if they are trying to manage the timeline along with me, they're not truly invested in and enjoying their day fully. Right. And I think that's really important.
I think that's totally true. I think that I see coordinators most of the time troubleshooting. It's usually not vendors running late, but it's, other things that happen, right?
Right. There's tons of little things that happen on the wedding day, but also beforehand. And so I think I have a quick story to tell, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, what do you got? Is it weird, or is it juicy?
No, it's not weird or juicy. It's just, it's a point. And I think it's cool because this was a wedding that we recently did together. Yeah. Super, super sweet couple. It was definitely a wedding that her mom wanted. So the bride's mom was the one who kind of pushed for this wedding. I think they would have been totally fine eloping. And what kind of happened along the way is the bride just kind of fell off the face of the earth. She didn't want to do the planning. This wasn't her dream wedding, and so as it started getting closer and closer, the venue manager is calling me and saying, "Hey, I need a timeline." I'm like, I haven't heard from them. Like, I've been reaching out.
Oh my gosh, what do you do? What do you do?
And so again, like, for me, I was texting with the groom because I feel like he was quicker at response. And it was like, "Hey, here are some recommendations for DJs, or here are some recommendations for hair and makeup." And they're like, "Okay, great." And I wouldn't hear back. And so as it gets closer, it's kind of that realization that, like, they're not going to book it. So I was like, "Listen, I've reached out to these vendors. This one is available. I have a contract. I just need you to sign and put a deposit."
So you're doing basically all the work.
So I'm basically doing more of a full service, which, again, when it comes to that point, like, of course, we're going to make sure that it happens. But where I'm going with this is if they didn't trust me, this would have been a lot harder along the way, right? It's understanding. And they were like, "We like you. We get you. We've talked to them a couple times. I think they booked you. They booked a couple other vendors. They trusted my recommendations at that point." So at this point, they were like, "If you just book the rest, we're golden. We're good." And I think that really helped, because if not, it would have been a constant stop and go, where they booked their DJ, I think, a week before the wedding. It was just, everything was very last minute, and I waited as long as I could until I just pulled the trigger. I'm like, okay, guys, I've created your timeline based on what I think is going to work for you. Yes or no. Versus normally a lot of times I let my clients have a lot of feedback. I'm like, this is your timeline. I've sent it to the venue. I've sent it to your photographer. Like, we're done. This is it. Is this good? And they were like, you know what? We haven't even looked at it. We trust you. Let's just roll with it.
I totally know exactly the client you're talking about. And for them, they needed you, right? They could care less about, like, they could care less about a lot of these things. Right. But like, part of this, nothing would ever have happened. And they would have been sitting around, twiddling their thumbs and trying to figure out what to do on their wedding day. And it really, I think that's a great example. But I actually think that's not the norm. Usually it's the opposite. Right. So we actually have lots of clients that are super involved in selecting their vendors and selecting every little nuance of their wedding details. And
most of them are very involved. And that's great. They should. It's their wedding day and they're putting a lot of time and money and their vision. They should be able to have input, right? But again, it's trusting your wedding planner and allowing them to guide you. This is why you've hired them, right?
Right.
Get your money's worth. Use us.
Exactly. Okay. So let's talk about this third thing that you have here. Pinterest and TikTok. You want to talk about, like, what does that have to do with wedding planning and coordinating?
Yeah, so I don't want to talk about it, but I will talk about it. And the reason is Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok, like, I am getting constant messages from all of these different social media channels from my clients saying, I love this. Can we do this? What about this? Does this work?
So you're talking more of like inspiration,
right? But it's just, I think a lot of it when they're looking at it without really thinking about their whole vision, thinking about their budget. Like, these are, and you know this, right? Like TikTok, Pinterest, like they're staged. A lot of it, you're doing it for the gram, right? You're doing it to make it look good. So a lot of these photo shoots, for example, right? They snap one photo or one quick reel and that's it. It's not a true wedding. It's not logistically possible to have a wedding with all of these candles, these real candles outside all night long, right?
Right. Or on the flip, you have like $1 million wedding. Yeah. That's like just amazing lighting and decor. But is it realistic for your budget?
Right.
Could you, can you afford $1 million wedding on a, $50,000 budget?
Right. So it's really kind of, it's nice to see, and it's definitely good for general ideas, but it's understanding though that we have to be able to take that and scale it to what works for your wedding.
So quick question then, how do you guide your clients to actually get an idea of their style, aesthetic, their vision? How do you, if you're not looking at Pinterest or other, like samples, like how do you get to that point?
Sure. So, it kind of starts with their budget, right? If they're really at a very low budget, if they're looking at Pinterest or Instagram or whatever, they're going to constantly, I think, be struggling to find something that works. So instead of getting all of these crazy inspirations, it's kind of starting basic. It's, what is your color? Do you have a theme or do you want a theme, right? And it's then, how do we then build on that with as minimal decor as possible, right? It kind of depends. If they have a bigger budget and they are able to spend, then I think, looking at social media is helpful. But a lot of times what happens with couples with tighter budgets, it's a lot harder when you're looking at all of these really, really grand things. Or if they are looking, a lot of times it's pinpointing specifically, like, what in this picture do you like? Do you like the hanging floral chandeliers? Well, you can't do it on a very, very small budget. So what can we do to create a focal point instead?
If you want to ride in on a horse.
Well, or an elephant. Yeah.
Or an eagle.
Yeah, right? Then how do you make that happen? What is your priority? Where do you want to spend your budget?
So Tessa, okay, awesome. Let's get into your fourth point.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Sure. So this is a big one. And I feel like when I was kind of scripting it in my head, it kind of is an all-inclusive umbrella of everything that wedding planners do. Okay.
Give us something that's helpful. That makes no sense to me.
So, okay.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
My key point here is we got you.
Okay, so all right, it's your mantra. We got you.
We got you, right? And so what I mean by that is, with your wedding planner, with your wedding coordinator on the day of, is our job is to be there for you in every possible way.
You are the support team, right?
We are. So just to kind of give you high level, right? Like, first point is, like, we are your hype squad. And what I mean by that is like our job is to keep you excited, keep you hydrated. If you have some family drama, we're kind of help to like navigate and like dance to like distract from it. Like, right, we want to keep you in a good mood. So whether it be running to grab food for the bride, so making sure that they're eating, or making sure that, you know, if grandma can get a little touchy, just kind of keeping her away from the bride right before, whatever it is, like we are there to kind of navigate.
What kind of touchy?
Whatever touchy.
Like annoyed or like touchy? Grandma?
Use your imagination. That's for you.
Tessa's going to shut you down if you get too touchy, Grandma.
Don't get too touchy. But so we're there to kind of help navigate the couple throughout the day. And that's really important, I think. And so, you know, so in addition to Hype Squad, I think something else that's really important is just our ability to kind of fix things. And when I say fix things, I mean literal fixing. So wardrobe malfunctions are a big one.
Do you have one of those like little bridal emergency kits, or do you have you actually probably have a huge one?
Well, it's a decent sized suitcase. I've really kind of compacted it and like suctioned it in.
So you have a suitcase that you bring to every wedding?
I have a suitcase that I bring to every wedding.
What's in your kit?
I'm just everything. What the super random things that I have, I think, are always really funny. Is I have like black socks because guys always forget their socks. I think
that's a good one. That's actually really helpful. Yeah.
The boob tape is always popular.
Okay.
I use that a lot. I use safety pins at every. I mean, I think at the last wedding that we did together, I think I used like 20 safety pins.
Oh, that's a lot. That's excessive.
Because they wanted to like attach a belt to the dress with the flower girl. I don't know. Safety pins all over the place.
Yeah.
Safety pins, bobby pins, boob tape. Those are probably the most popular things at every wedding I'm using constantly.
Right. The reason why you have this big kit is because you have experience of like, oh, we need like Tide, you know, stain
so
removers.
We have Tide pens. You know, I think a wedding I just did, the mom's dress had like a little hole. It was in its seam. I couldn't sew it, so I had to like stick it, like boob tape it. And it stayed the whole night. I checked at the end. It was still together.
There you go.
So it's a constant. So we are constantly doing wardrobe malfunction fixes. So whether it be, again, safety pins or tapes, or even, I think we talked about this before, is, you know, the guys will unpack their suits and they were like, what's this? It's a bow tie. They've never tied a bow tie in their life.
Right.
And so it's just, you know, so our job is to kind of fix those things or help you through them. I would say bow ties are a big one. Some guys don't know how to tie ties, like basic ties, so we'll do that. Wedding dresses. A lot of times the brides are under the impression that they know how to do it, or they're like, oh yeah, my bridesmaids know.
I want to just say one more thing that I notice between when we have coordinators and when we don't. So
right.
we've seen so much horrible stuff go on at DIY weddings. And you always read about them. You know, we experienced them a lot. I had one wedding. This was kind of the beginning of my career as a wedding photographer. And the bride was doing everything herself.
Right.
And she had her ceremony. She wanted to have a sunset ceremony. It was all the way up on the North Shore. And she was still like working on the guest favors when she was supposed to be doing her hair and makeup, had no clue about her time and her timeline and her time management. She didn't finish her hair and makeup until an hour after the sun had set.
Oh my God. And so she missed the whole sunset.
Oh her guests are sitting in this. I mean, I think she was an hour and a half late. Her guests had been sitting at the ceremony site for 2 hours waiting for her. I mean, can you imagine that?
No, that's great. And you know me, because I'm early, I would have been waiting for 2.5 hours. I'd be just waiting there.
Yeah, and
God.
And by the time, and so this is a venue on the North Shore. It was like on the ocean with no lighting. So like, what do you do? Like, it's completely pitch black. You have no backdrop.
Right.
So, I mean, it was like...
How are her photos?
Well, okay, so they were horrible. No, but it was like, you know, and this was at the very beginning of my career, and I learned a lot about, you know, why you have to have somebody there just to keep things rolling and keep things on time. Because what was the solution for this? How did they light the ceremony up without the sun? You know, they didn't have lighting.
What did they do?
They brought in their pickup trucks.
Stop.
They put on their high beams. And,
oh my God. But wait, what about the reception? Like, was there lighting?
The reception was fine because it was, you know, it was lit.
Oh
But the ceremony site was set up with the chairs and with the arch and everything, they had no lighting. Nobody could see anything. It was literally pitch black.
That's sad. That's really sad.
I can pop as much flashes as I want. It's still going to look ghetto, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's really sad. And, and so for me, I think just having that person on the wedding day to just push the responsibility to, that is worth it to me.
Keep things on track.
Yeah. It's pushing that responsibility off of you and your friends and allowing someone else to do it for you.
And plus, I just have to re-emphasize this point. It's all that knowledge that coordinators who have been doing this for such a long time bring to the table. And they say, okay, if you're going to have 12 bridesmaids, you got to start your hair and makeup at this time in order to get through them all. If you're going to serve this many people dinner, this is how long it's going to take. And so I think, that's something that if you don't have that experience, that long learned, lived experience, you're not going to have on your wedding day.
For sure.
And that's where I see things go really wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tessa, let's go to the last point. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so my last point is kind of for wedding planners, but then vendors in general. And it's that we are humans too.
What do you mean? Obviously, we're humans.
Yeah. And so, what I mean is I think it's easy to kind of get caught up in the wedding planning, but it's also understanding that your vendors, wedding planners included, are humans. So we have families, we have, other things going on in our lives, and we are so committed to your wedding, but we're also trying to find that balance in life. So it's understanding that at a wedding, we are fully in. But as a human, sometimes we have to stop and pee. Or I get hungry, I have to stop and eat for a second. So.
Right. Well, are you also talking about just realistic expectations? I'm sure you get bombarded by a million emails from a single client.
Exactly. And I think that's just it, right? It's understanding that we are, again, fully vested in your wedding. It does not mean that we can respond in 10 minutes after you email. So it's understanding that we are going to get to your answers. We're going to help you. We're going to do everything we can possible. But it's finding that balance of just understanding that as humans, we sleep at night. Not all of us. Some of us stay awake all night long. But
and you have a podcast. Come on, guys.
This is taking up way more time than I thought. So it's finding that balance and understanding that balance with, again, not just with wedding planners, because for me, a lot of times when I'm talking to my clients, they'll say, hey, I emailed this florist. It's been 24 hours and they haven't replied.
Right.
But it's understanding, right? They are the sole business owner. They are a mother of 3 kids. They are, so there's so many other things going on. They may be on vacation.
Yeah.
So it's finding that balance and just understanding, guys, that we are all humans, have some compassion. We're all here to support your wedding. That was a lot to cover.
As usual, I'm overwhelmed, but lots of good nuggets of information.
A lot of good stuff. But I want to recap and kind of start by just going over, right, the differences between a wedding planner, a wedding coordinator, even a venue coordinator. They're different. So just kind of understanding that they're all different, having an idea of what you're looking for before you start talking to people, I think will set you up for success.
And identifying what you need and, maybe what you want, right? So.
Right. And that way you can specifically ask them, this is what I need. Can you provide that for me?
Right.
And then the next part, right, is going into the 5 things that we as wedding planners wish that you knew. First one is we're not all the same.
Right. So every company offers different types of services, right?
Every person has a different personality. So finding that right fit for you for your service and personality is, I think, key.
Because the wedding planners and wedding coordinators are going to be with you for the long haul, right?
Right. So if you hate me, don't book me. It's going to be awkward. It'll be awkward for both of us.
Right.
Okay. The next one is we don't know everything.
But you will try to learn.
We're going to try to learn. And it's also, though, understanding that we need to get to a place where you trust your wedding planner or your wedding coordinator to do everything in their power to still make this work for your wedding.
And make your vision come alive and understand and learn your vision, right?
Exactly.
Right.
That's the goal. Third tip is social media is just a starting point. So your Pinterest, your TikToks, your Instagrams, it's a starting point. This is not the end all be all. Okay. So the next point is that we got you in every possible way on your wedding, big or small. We are there to support you and your wedding.
I always see that. That is so true. The coordinator is always the superhero at the end of the day, so that little issues can stay little issues.
Exactly. So the last point that I want to make is that we are humans too.
Right. We are not robots. We are not your personal servants. We have feelings.
Yeah, we have feelings. Joe's going to cry.
Shut up.
But it's true. It's understanding. And truly, I believe if you treat your vendors well, your wedding day experience will be so much better because they will do everything in their power to make your day amazing.
And I think that's such a great tip for all of our listeners. Like, just in your own life, I know, like, if someone treats me with kindness or gratitude, I am like so hyped to be around them. And if they're yelling at me, of course, I'm going to have a totally different experience with them.
Right.
And I'm going to treat them differently. So
this feels like a life lesson. Treat people with kindness. Don't make Joe cry.
I love this episode. I think this is super helpful. I think we can do a few more episodes about wedding coordination and wedding planning, like some deep dive, into some of these things. But I think this is a good place to start. Just making those distinctions is so important. It's going to set us up for success.
Right, for sure. Thanks so much for listening, you guys. This was a good one. I loved talking about wedding planning. I love talking about the crazy stories that we've been through. I hope you enjoyed as much as we do. If you did enjoy the episode, please check us out on Patreon to support us, patreon.com, Unveiling Paradise. Also, if you have more questions, please email us, unveilingparadisepodcast@gmail.com. We are down for any wild, crazy questions that you can have for us.
And as always, please subscribe to our podcast. If you have not done so,
please do it.
Click that 5-star button, make it shine. And we look forward to sharing more of our crazy, wild, zany wedding coordinating and wedding photography stories on our next episode. We'll see you guys then.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Unveiling Paradise.
If you enjoy our show, please follow us and rate us on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. It would really mean a lot.
And don't forget to also get on our mailing list and follow us on Instagram. Just do it already.
Until next time, this is Tessa.
And this is Joe.
And don't forget, your happily ever after
is just a plane ride away.